I'm typing this from my car. I haven't gone back inside. I don't think I ever will. My hands are still shaking so badly I keep hitting the wrong keys. But I need to get this out. I need someone to know what I found. I moved into apartment 4B 6 weeks ago. Top floor. Big windows. New paint smell. I remember thinking, finally, something good. I bought a giant monstera plant and put it by the window and stood there feeling like my life was finally starting. I had no idea something was already living there. Something that had been waiting a very, very long time for someone to come home. The first gift showed up on a Tuesday. I opened my door for a DoorDash delivery, and there it was, sitting dead center on my welcome mat like it had always been there. A silver locket, old, tarnished, the kind a little girl might wear. I picked it up. It was freezing cold. Not cool from the floor cold. Cold like it had been pulled out of ice water. I looked both ways, down the hall. Nobody. Not a sound. I opened the locket. Empty inside. I put a thank you note in the lobby and forgot about it. That was my first mistake. I should have thrown it into the trash and called my landlord and gotten out right then. But I didn't. And the gifts kept coming. Every single morning. A tiny doll shoe. A wooden spinning top. A brass button with an anchor engraved on it. A pressed flower so old and dry it crumbled slightly when I touched it. They appeared without a sound, without a footstep, without any explanation. My kitchen counter started to look like the lost and found box of someone's entire childhood. I told myself it was a quirky neighbor, an artist, a prank. I laughed about it on the phone with my friend Sarah. I said, "Yo, I think a ghost has a crush on me." Sarah didn't laugh. She said, "Maya, get a camera." The skeleton key arrived on a Friday. Huge, rusted iron, like something from a movie about places you should never go. I held it and my whole body went cold. The same cold as the locket. Not the temperature of a hallway, the temperature of something wrong. That night I bought a motion sensor camera and set it up on my bookshelf, aimed at the front door. I barely slept. Every creak in the building made me sit upright. At some point around 2 a.m. I heard the scratching, thin, rhythmic, coming from just outside my door. I lay in my bed and did not move. I did not breathe. I stared at my phone waiting for the motion alert. It never came. In the morning, a folded square of newspaper was on the mat. The camera had recorded 8 hours of an empty hallway, except for 3 moments, where the video dissolved into static. Exactly 3 seconds each. Exactly 3:14 a.m. The second night, I set the camera to record everything. No motion trigger. Just continuous footage. All night long. I watched the video the next morning with my coffee going cold beside me. At 3:14 a.m., the air in the hallway changed. It shimmered, like heat haze rising off summer asphalt. The sound went to pure, white static. And then a shape assembled itself from the interference, the way a face emerges from static if you stare long enough. Except I was not imagining this. It was tall, thin, floating maybe 3 inches off the floor. It had the rough outline of a person, but the edges kept breaking apart and reforming, like a signal that couldn't quite hold. It drifted to my door. It crouched. When it straightened up, a new object was sitting on the mat. And then it didn't leave. It stood there facing my door. And then, slowly, it raised one arm and pointed, not at the door, not at the lock, not toward me. It pointed down, at the floorboards just inside my apartment. It held that position for exactly 10 seconds. Then it came apart, piece by piece, back into static. and was gone. I watched it 11 times. I sent the video to Sarah. She called me immediately and told me to get out. I told her I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I understood. I looked at everything on my counter. The locket, the doll shoe, the spinning top, the anchor button, the dried flower, the newspaper, the key. I had been thinking of them as gifts, as a game, but they weren't. They were a vocabulary. They were the only language left to something that could no longer speak. They were a child's things. I want you to understand how frightened I was. I want you to understand that every single rational part of my brain was screaming at me to walk out the door and not come back. I stood in my apartment for a long time, just breathing. The morning light was coming through the big windows, and the monstera plant was green and alive, and everything looked completely normal. I got the crowbar from my toolbox. The loose boards were easy to find once I was looking. 3 of them, maybe 4 feet from the front door, slightly lighter in color than the rest, replaced at some point, sanded but never properly stained to match. I knelt down. I worked the flat edge of the crowbar into the seam. I heard the scratching start the moment I touched the boards. From below, right below where I was kneeling. Thin, rhythmic. The same sound I'd been hearing at night. Except now I understood. It wasn't coming from outside my door. It had never been coming from outside my door. It was coming from inside my floor. I pried up the first board, the second. The smell hit me before I could see anything. Old and close and cold. The smell of a place that had been sealed for years. I used my phone flashlight and looked down into the gap. There was a wooden box, small, maybe 18 inches long, the kind of plain, unfinished pine box that costs almost nothing to make. It had been wrapped in a child's wool coat, dark green with small pearl buttons, and placed carefully, deliberately in the hollow between the floorboards and the subfloor. Tied to the top of the box with a ribbon that had faded from red to a pale orange was a card. The handwriting on it was an adult's, neat, careful, the loops of someone trying to stay in control. And it said only 4 words. Please find her. Please. I don't know how long I knelt there on my floor. I know I was crying. I know the scratching had stopped. Completely, totally, for the first time since I moved in. The apartment felt different. It felt quiet in a way it had never felt before, like something that had been holding its breath for a very long time had finally been allowed to exhale. I called 911. I told them what I found. I didn't touch the box. I walked out of the building in my socks, and I sat on the hood of my car, and I waited. It's been 4 hours. The police are still up there. A detective came to talk to me. A woman with a quiet voice who wrote everything down and told me I did the right thing. She asked me how I found it. I showed her the video. I watched her face change as she watched it. They've been making calls, pulling building records, searching old tenant files. I heard one of them say a name, Eleanor, and I don't know if that was the mother or the child. I don't know if I want to know. What I do know is this. The locket was hers. The doll shoe was hers. The spinning top, the button, the dried flower, all hers. Someone had hidden them in that hollow space along with her, one by one, like they couldn't bear to throw them away. And then something, whatever was left of her, whatever couldn't leave, had spent years pushing them up through the floorboards, offering them to whoever would listen, begging, in the only language still available, for someone to come and find her. She waited a long time. She picked the right person. I looked back at my apartment window before I drove away. Just once. The monstera plant was a green silhouette against the glass. And beside it, just for a moment, just for 1 second, there was another shape, small, the height of a child, standing perfectly still. Then the light shifted, and it was gone. I don't think she's there anymore. I think she was just saying goodbye. I think she's finally allowed to leave. I'm not going back to apartment 4B, but I'm glad I was the one who moved in. I'm glad she found me. Rest now, Eleanor. Whoever you were, rest now.